Hi, Jeppe. Thank you so much for joining my personal branding series that I run on my blog. This is a long-running series where I talk to people who are doing extraordinary work, just trying to understand how they go about what they do and if there are any lessons and practices that they can share with others. So again, thank you so much for taking the time. Before we get started, it will be great if you could introduce yourself for the benefit of our viewers.
Yeah, so my name is Jeppe Hansgaard. I'm the CEO of Innovisor. I'm with you here from Denmark, where we have autumn, but it's still nice. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Fantastic. And I'm also very grateful to you for showing me a bit around Copenhagen when I was there in 2018. So thank you. So let's get started, Jeppe. So what, according to you, how do you define personal branding? What's it? What does that mean in your words?
So in my words, personal branding are the efforts you undertake to build a position for your own thoughts and visions in the market.
Fantastic. And I know you are humble and you will not consider yourself as a personal brand, but I want to know what are some of those signs which tell you that you are progressing with your personal brand?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that I can see on the personal branding side is that I generate followers over time, right? And it's not that I kind of try to build followers, but I have seen a minimum tenfold increase over the last 2-3 years in number of followers on Twitter and on LinkedIn. So people that kind of follow what I try to share, the thoughts I have, and the experiences I share from working with what I do work with.
Okay. And so if you could, think about, I mean, I know, trying to, tease out your entire journey, but if you think about what are some of those building blocks of a personal brand, how do you go about creating it?
Yeah, so I think when I started, and it's really like 5 years ago, I felt like I had a story to share.
Right.
I wanted to share a story about how influence traveled within organizations. It was really a story about a Frenchman who, much to the surprise of the leaders in that organization, after only being with the organization for 4 months, he was suddenly the most influential person. And the dialogue I had back then with the HR director was a dialogue that I really wanted to share with everybody else, because I thought there was some learning in it for all of us in how you can behave to become influential, but also in making sure that we're not just blind and rely on the facts that we've been reading in textbooks for 20 years. I mean, personal influence is something else than just being at the top of the pyramid. It's also about being nice and a good person.
Great.
So that story I wanted to share, and that's really where I started my very first blog post on LinkedIn. It had good traction, even though, I mean, my followership was not big. Maybe I had 500 followers or so on LinkedIn back then. But then I thought, okay, but this is actually interesting. I actually saw the way that I was communicating this as a way of learning for myself. So I kept on writing posts, and I think I've been writing more than 100 posts since. And as I said, the followership has increased by at least 10 times. So I got 5,000 followers today on LinkedIn, and I think around, I'm not sure how many thousand I have on Twitter.
Great. So, I mean, that's an interesting segue, because I want to also ask you about, the work you're doing with Innovisor. So, the fact that networking or networks inside the organizations are quite powerful. And you, according to your research, I believe % of people who are really the best influencers, the top influencers. So how can one go about being a strong influencer within the organization? What must they do?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is that they need to be a good person. I think if you're a good person that people would like to ask for help, that starts to make you influential. There's some really good research, and now I can't share a link with you here, but I think the first article I read was one called "Competent Jerks, Lovable Fools, and the Formation of Social Networks." And what it really tells you is that if you're sympathetic and competent, then you can have influence. And the important thing in this is that actually that if you have a choice between a sympathetic but not so competent person and a competent but very unsympathetic person, then most people would actually choose the sympathetic person, right? The sympathetic, less competent person. So the being a jerk is not what brings you forward in terms of influence. It's actually about being a good guy or a good person, and that's a positive signal, really, right? And then so that's really the core of our message. The other thing that is core to our message is that I mean, people actually have influence on each other. So emotions are contagious. So if I'm really happy about something and I have an influence on somebody, then I can actually spread my happiness or my contagions. My emotions are contagious. There's some really good research on that as well, which we've also used. It's from a book called Connected by a guy called Christiakis. And I mean, I seriously recommend that everybody should follow him. It's really nice work. But it shows that if I'm happy when I get into the office or into the workplace, then there's a 15% higher chance that the people that are influenced by me, they will also be happy.
Right.
That's a positive thing, right? I mean, if that is not an excuse for getting into the office in a good mood, then I don't know what. The other thing is that people that are influenced by me, they actually also influence other people. So the people that are already at a distance of 2 from me, right, they have a 10% higher chance of being happy as well if I'm just happy. So I think when I read that book, and that's almost 10 years ago, I kind of discovered that I wanted to change my view on how to act and make sure that I'm always happy, that I'm smiling, that I greet people when I get into the office or when I see them in the supermarket or whatever. And it, I mean, you very often you get smiles back. So that's what I'm trying.
Fantastic. So if I were to ask you, who are some of, couple of names that come to your mind who are personal brands according to you, and why do you admire them? What are some of those characteristics that you admire about them?
Yeah, so in my preparation for this call, I came up with 3 brands that I really admire, and one of them is Adam Grant. What I really like about Adam Grant is that he's constantly sharing information. I mean, he stays on topic, but he's sharing information from different angles that relates to his topic, which is, I guess, people and organizations, right? There's another guy that I also like, actually a couple of guys. I like a guy in Canada who is called Hilton Barber. And I can seriously recommend following Hilton. Hilton is in the field of organizational culture.
Okay.
He's just a nice guy, right? He shares stuff. He wants to make sure that people develop, and you can feel it. So I really like him. He's not so known, I would imagine, but he actually deserves being known. And then of course, I mean, I also like Seth Godin because Seth Godin, he's got some provocative opinions, but I guess those 3 would be on the top of my list.
Nice. And those are, I definitely follow Adam Grant. I've read some of his books, so I really know the kind of great stuff that he does. So if I were to ask you, while you go about building your brand, I know it's not done very consciously, but what are some of the challenges that you face while building a personal brand, and what techniques would you use to overcome them?
Yes. So there are a couple of techniques, I would call it. One of them is being disciplined about communicating. So I used to have a discipline about writing a new blog post at least every second week.
Got it.
So that's where I started out with. Then I kind of realized, okay, writing a new blog post while being a CEO of a company like mine is kind of difficult just to have that consistency, right? And then somebody said to me, yeah, you need someone to write for you, right? So then you just sign and then it's all yours. I don't believe in that. I think it has to be authentic and people will feel it right away if it's not me talking. So actually I kind of I lowered my barrier a bit, and I guess right now I'm at maybe 15 posts per year or so, where I try to share longer reads, longer stories. But then next to it, I've kind of started also to share shorter stories.
Right.
When I say short stories, it's like maximum 10 lines. It's almost like Seth Godin style, right?
Right.
Or 8 lines or whatever, right? So just to make people's minds bubble. And that works pretty well. And I think the maximum number of views I've had on one of those is 400,000 people, which at least for me, it's a lot.
Interesting.
So it's about sharing stuff with some kind of regularity.
Right.
But then you say, okay, so where do you get the stories from, right? And I think I get the stories from going on a run every morning, and then when I have something, I actually stop up and I write it down on my phone. And actually, I do that throughout the day. Every single time I have an idea, even if it's a meeting with a client, I just write it down, and then I pick it up and use that to kind of to post something.
Great points. Yeah. So Jeppe, if I were to ask you, while you go about building your brand, most people say that it's about gaining something, losing something, because it's about time, and you may not find enough time for your family, or you may be doing a lot where you end up burning yourself. So what is the philosophy around personal branding? How do you kind of balance this out?
Yeah, so I actually think what I gain from it is learning, right? But then I actually feel good about doing it. And when I hear that people appreciate it, I'm also happy. And I actually think that what we do in Innovisor is something that actually can change the way people work. And I feel it's good for everybody if we can share it. So it's time I want to invest, and you can say I take it away from my family. Yeah, I probably do, but I think what I do is my passion, right? So my mind will be bubbling anyway. So it's probably to get it out of my head and down to a computer or a blog post. Anyway, and sometimes I get up really early in the morning at 5 o'clock and write that blog post, right? So
that's a great point. Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. So there are people out there who are wanting to create a brand for themselves. So what's your advice for someone who's starting from scratch?
I think starting from scratch, first of all, make sure you have a catalog of ideas. I think that's really the first thing. You need 10 ideas minimum. And you almost need to have these 10 ideas written out in blog post, because if you don't have that, then the regularity you need to build a personal brand is not going to happen, right? So I see some people trying to build personal brands. They write 2, 3, 4 good blog posts, but then they go away, focus on something else, and then they read 6 months later, right? And that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So you need to stay there, especially in the beginning.
Got it.
Then I think you need to find a topic that you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, people will feel it right away. Right. So that is really important. And then you need to find your own writing style. What is it? Where will you find it, or where will you be authentic, right? So we discuss that in Innovisor sometimes, where I say to my people, you should not replicate me, because that's me, that's my style. I like to write like this, right? But if you want to write in a different style, then do that, right? Because that's your style. And again, I think it's all about the authenticity. If you don't do that, then people will feel it right away.
Got it. Interesting. And related question to that, is there are a lot of these youngsters who believe that they can be one-time YouTube hit wonders and become famous and get a personal brand. So what's your advice for youngsters who are trying to personal brand for themselves?
Yeah, so my objective was never to create a personal brand, right? So maybe I'm not the right person to ask here, but really stay authentic. Right. Stay authentic. Focus on something you're passionate about, and then I think there is something about the simplicity of your messaging. And now I know I just said that you should write in your own style, but I think if you really want to get out there today, then you need to have a simplicity in your message, and you probably also need to make sure you have a visual message. And I think that was probably easier like 5 years ago. But I think today, when people scroll down their feed on their own, right, you need something to capture the attention. So in Innovisor, for example, we have actually, because of that, decided to work much more with videos and carousels and visuals, just to make sure we get the attention code when people scroll through the social media feeds.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, during this COVID situation and, there's so much of turbulence in the economy and all that. So what's your advice for personal brands? Because, how should they conduct themselves? Should they change their mode of operation? Should they think of ways differently? So what's your thinking there?
So my thinking is definitely that because of the COVID situation, people are much more online than they've ever been before.
Right.
So people are scrolling through their feeds. They are also in the way they evaluate vendors, which is more relevant for me, right? They will be looking at people's profiles,
Right.
and I think, I really think it's about being authentic, visible. Visible is probably very good advice, really, right? So which goes back to, you cannot just do it like every month. You have to have a higher frequency. But being visual, authentic, passionate, and I think if you have that, and you also share, pictures and stuff like that, then people will feel you. I think it's about getting to the heart of the people, right? If you can find the message that kind of combines the heart with the brain, then you have something to come with. If you only come with a visual, but there's no heart in it, and there's no brain, then I think you're losing.
Great point. And reflecting on your journey and your career, and if you had an opportunity to reflect and change anything, is there anything that you would change about how you've gone about your personal branding journey? I would say
I would have started much earlier. I would say that would have made things so much easier. Definitely. What I can do now is that Innovisor has been in business for 13 years, right? If I run out of stories, what I do is that I go into the backlog of projects, and I just run through the old debriefs and stuff like that, and that's where I find the stories. Or I reconnect with a client that I talked to 10 years ago, and ask about, okay, so how are you doing? What happened 10 years ago, and how did you feel about it? And that's where I find my stories. So I really think, rather than me now inventing my own stories, I'm talking about clients that have been doing stuff, understood their own networks, how people collaborated, how people were innovating inside their organizations. And that's what I can share.
Great. And as we wrap up, I just want to ask you, what's your mantra or recipe for personal branding success? I know you covered some points about being human and being, sensitive and all that, but what's your, one-line summary on personal branding?
I think the one-line summary is just do it.
Right.
There's nothing to lose, right? So if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. I guess I don't know how many billion people we are in the world today, but somebody else will share the story that you wanted to share if you don't do it.
Fantastic. This has been fantastic. Really nice talking to you, and again reconnecting after a couple of years. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Really I hope we can see one day in Denmark again.
Yeah, I'd love to come over again. It's lovely. It's a lovely country, and great people. So thank you so much for doing this again.
It's good talking to you again. Bye-bye.